The Best Way to Explain It, Episode 6. Welcome back. It's Scott and Breckan with another episode of The Best Way to Explain It, the podcast with the aftertaste of one of those off-brand antacids that you take after single-handedly consuming a triple order of topper sticks at 1:30 at night. You know what I mean?
Pretty much every time you and I hung out, right?
I was hoping you'd get that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, okay, so it wasn't single-handedly. We tag-teamed. But
We definitely tag-teamed, but we tag-teamed way too much for a diabetic.
It was far too many carbs for, well, even for a healthy person to be consuming in, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, we might as well have guzzled garlic butter and shoved cheese in our mouths at the same time.
We kind of did.
I guess that is what we kind of did.
I drank some of that garlic butter. No, I did that.
I think I remember watching you. Possibly daring you.
It was just going to go to waste if I didn't. See, what you do is you drink the garlic butter out of the little sauce container that they give you, and then you put the topper sticks in your mouth. And that was the way to do it.
Is that how you get the best buttery, garlicky flavor notes out of the cheese sticks and garlic sauce?
I mean, that's how I did it.
Well, that is definitely one way to do it.
Oh man, but it just you just felt horrible you'd wake up at 4:30 sweating, and you're just like, why did I eat that much food?
Your
3 hours
left
ago?
arm is kind of numb, and you're thinking whether or not you should call the ambulance, but you realize it's 4:30 and you probably have a test the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or otherwise known as college.
Yeah. Good times though. That's the clutch thing about toppers. They're open till 3.
That clutch is one word for it.
That's also the bad thing about toppers.
Yeah. I would do great on my diet. I wouldn't eat breakfast. I would do some intermittent fasting. I'd eat a healthy lunch and then a decent supper, and then you'd come over and be like, hey, want some toppers?
And then I'd always offer to pay.
Yeah.
And you're just like, if you're getting them, I guess I'll eat them if they're here.
I would try and say no at first, though. I would be like, No, I'm trying to eat healthy, man. And then you'd say it like 2 more times, and I'd be down.
The willpower can only last so long.
Yeah, very true.
Oh, man.
Especially when playing Battlefield or Fallout 4.
Oh, my goodness. Because my keyboard and mouse would always be super greasy after that.
You'd have to take it to the dry cleaners, basically.
Pretty much. And just hose it off with some water.
Oh, that's great. We had some good times back in the good old college days.
We did, but now we're both grown adults. Well,
yeah.
Almost.
Close.
Almost.
Attempting to be.
Well, some of us are. Some of us do class twice a week and then sit in their room podcasting.
And then one of us is also in college.
That was me.
Ew.
Oh, but that was not the only memory that we had from college.
It definitely was not.
We also drank a lot of coffee.
We drank so much coffee that I'm pretty sure I'm still on a caffeine high from college.
Oh, okay. You remember that caffeine crawl you, me, and my brother did?
That was the best and worst feeling I've ever felt.
Okay, if you guys have never drank, how many cups of coffee do you suppose we had in a 3-hour time frame?
Close to 6, I want to say.
Yeah.
Of highly caffeinated coffee, not
So,
Folgers or anything.
I'm trying to think. The first shop we went to. Okay, so basically the story is for those who weren't there, which is everybody but my brother.
Yeah.
And you. Basically, well, I guess Ethan was there too for a little bit.
Un poquito.
Yeah, a little bit. So the story was my brother was hanging out with me some weekend, and the Omaha where I live has really, really good coffee. A lot of great shops. And my brother had been really getting into coffee. And so I was like, dude, you got to come to all of these shops. You got to try them. But we only had one day to do it. And so I called up Breckan, and I'm like, dude, we got to take this guy on a caffeine crawl. So caffeine crawl was just, it's like a bar crawl, but for, coffee drinkers. And we visited 4 shops, was it? The 4 shops, right? We got to all 4 of them.
Yeah, we did.
We got to all 4 shops, and we had, let's see, I think I had a cold brew and a pour over at the first shop.
Which we will get into for anyone that doesn't know what those are.
Yeah. Well, there's the topic for today,
well,
coffee.
I ruined it, but I think if we're going to ramble on about our caffeine crawl, they might as well know it has a point to it.
Right. So there's a cold brew, which has it's a high amount of caffeine in a cold brew, and a pour over. So that's two cups in. And I think you had that as well.
Yep.
Then I think we went and ate somewhere. Then we went to another shop, and you got an espresso flight there. So that's 3 cups for you.
Yep.
And I just had 2 drip cups of coffee. And so I'm at 4 cups. You're at
5.
5. Yeah, 5, because espresso is 3 flights there. And then the third shop we went to, I think I just had 1, and I was fading at this point.
If you can get drunk off of coffee, I'm pretty sure we were drunk off of coffee at this point.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, we managed that much caffeine in our systems.
Oh my goodness. And then, so I think we just all had 1 cup there. And then the last place we went, I think my brother didn't even finish his cup.
Yeah.
I powered through, but we were just so done, and I was jittery and ready to lay down and probably, not fall asleep, because I was about ready to run a marathon or something.
You had to like lay there and make sure that everything was okay. Was
Pretty
what
much.
I did, because I couldn't focus because the caffeine content was too high. I couldn't even do menial tasks because I was moving so fast. I would have broken something.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know what I did for the rest of the day, but I know I didn't get much done.
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember that night. I really don't.
You blacked out on coffee.
I'm telling you, it was a coffee drunk.
Well,
and apparently that's possible.
That may be what happened. You never know.
Yeah.
This world is a crazy place.
It really is. Okay.
Well,
so with that anecdote out of the way, why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Yeah. So if you didn't catch the first 7 minutes of this, Scott and I like to drink coffee. And not only that, we like to fix the world's problems when we drink coffee, at least theoretically. And we also had a lot of fun talking about anything under the sun. This podcast was developed basically through our love of drinking coffee and talking about random subjects. And luckily, we had a great friend of Scott who suggested coffee, which gave us a perfect opportunity to blabber incessantly. Sean sent us a request, and he said, I drink a lot of black coffee. When I decide to get something else, it usually ends with staring at a menu trying to figure out drinks I don't recognize. What are they? Also, what are some advantages / extra flavors / why should I look at trying new ways to brew coffee? Since his suggestion was right up both Scott and I's alley, I basically researched for 10 hours one day to give you the most in-depth coffee snobbish podcast you've ever listened to.
And to be honest, yes, full disclosure. First of all, thank you very much, Sean.
Yes.
Love you, buddy. He took advantage of the suggestions page on our website at thebestwaytoexplainit.com/suggestions. So if we're not talking about topics that you want to listen to, then that's your fault because you haven't suggested a good topic to us yet. So if you want to do that, go to thebestwaytoexplainit.com/suggestions. Give us your topic, and your reason why we should explain it. And if we like it, we'll be in personal contact with you, and we'll give you a shout out on the show like we just did for Sean here. And so since Sean is awesome and he basically opened the floodgates, and this is funny because he just barely peeked open the floodgates, and he's like, could I learn just a little bit about coffee? This episode is going to be a long one.
Yeah.
So buckle your seatbelts because we could talk about coffee for a really long time.
In fact, I'm pretty sure one time when we met up for coffee, we only talked about coffee, and it was about a 2-hour conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But
easily.
I don't even know if Scott knows this about me. I've personally been drinking coffee from a very young age. I want to say since before I was 10 years old, and blah, 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 stints your growth, whatever. I was drinking Starbucks white chocolate mochas, so they barely count as coffee. We would...
No, I thought you said drink coffee at a young age.
Yeah. Well, I said that it barely counts.
Yeah.
We'll get into
there was a little bit.
We'll get into the Starbucks bashing later.
Okay. Also, full disclosure, this is going to be, if you hate coffee snobs, turn off this podcast because we are the two of the biggest coffee snobs you'll probably ever find.
Yeah, I used to be like you, and then my eyes were opened to this wonderful world of coffee. But
don't worry, we're not going to judge though. Like everybody has to start from somewhere. But if it sounds snobby
and condescending,
just know that it is.
As Scott is being right now. But
okay, go for it.
Those white chocolate mochas were like a Sunday treat. I would get them with my family on the way back home after church. But when I grew older, I learned the amazing effect of drinking coffee in the morning and only needing 15 minutes to get ready instead of an hour. And I heard it was more manly to drink black coffee. I don't know. I was probably watching a sitcom or something. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to be a man. I was probably 12 years old at the time. And decided to drink some black coffee from now on. Caffeine fueled most of my college years. And eventually I blew over $100 on coffee brewing supplies. I'll get into that later, but it's pretty awesome. Probably the best $100 I've ever spent.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. And then, if you think that we're not going to touch on the basics of coffee and you think we're just going to get super advanced real quick, I'm going to ease you in.
You haven't listened to this podcast.
I'm going to ease you in with a little bit of history of coffee. Coffee originates from Africa in the 11th century. So, 1000, like the year 1000, because
is that it?
I had to explain that. Yeah. And
yeah,
then,
that's right.
Specifically, the plant was discovered in Ethiopia, which it's currently one of the many excellent origins of coffee. Anywhere in Africa, they've been growing the coffee plant for so long that they've just destroyed the industry as far as competition. Any African coffee that you hear of is going to be 1,000 times better than a coffee from Brazil or I don't even know where else to go with
it. The best African coffee is better than the best, other places.
And yeah, it depends on who roasts it, and we'll get into that too. If you have a bad roaster and they get an African coffee, it's still going to be a bad coffee because they're not experienced in roasting. But the coffee plant, unlike the beans that you actually buy from a store or the grounds that you find in like a Folgers tin or something, the coffee plant is actually a flowering berry plant with cherries holding the coffee bean inside. So they're these red cherries with these white flowers that smell like jasmine. And the berry was actually boiled in a pot, releasing the chemicals within the coffee bean and thought to have medicinal properties. Coffee spread from Ethiopia to Yemen, then to Istanbul, where Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent was introduced to coffee by Ozdemir Pasha, the Ottoman governor of Yemen. So right in the thick of all the wars going on over there. At least they've got coffee going on.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So in Istanbul, which was Constantinople, but now it's Istanbul, for all those who get that reference. Istanbul, a new method for brewing this wonderful drink was discovered by roasting the beans over a fire. They would dry out the berry, get the beans out of there, and roast them over a fire. Then they would finally grind the roasted beans and then slowly cook them over the ashes in boiling water of like the fire that they had going on, because obviously electricity didn't exist.
Oh, didn't it?
No, well, I mean, if the aliens were still there, then
I'm doing
maybe.
the guy's hands. Aliens.
Aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they had electricity, but then they lost it for some reason.
Because the aliens.
But the drink was so popular that there was even a position in the court functionalities in Istanbul that the position of chief coffee maker was considered extremely important.
And it should be to this day.
Yes. In fact, in one of those coffee shops in Omaha, there was some graffiti on the wall. They've recently painted over it, but someone sharpied, "Baristas, your job is so important. You have no idea." And it was always beautiful. I would walk in there and I'd be like, this is the truth to my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the nicest graffiti artists I've ever heard of.
It was at Aromas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, wait, which one?
Benson.
Benson. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
So this version of coffee is coined as Turkish coffee. The bold flavors and intriguing history behind Turkish coffee make it one of the most interesting types of coffee to me, but most Americans really would hate Turkish coffee. It's just this big, bold, like burnt cup of coffee. Then again, a lot of people drink Folgers.
Starbucks.
Yes. So if you're one of those like latte style people who like to drink lattes or caramel macchiato, it hurts saying those words. You would hate Turkish coffee. So we're going to fast forward here about 600 years. Coffee moved through trade routes to Venice, Italy, and Marseille, France. Marseille? Do you know, Scott?
Marseille. Right, because isn't that where the Treaty of Marseille?
Yep, the Treaty of Marseille.
That'd be right.
I thought so. It just...
I know history, too.
And then it moved...
No.
What?
That's Versailles, isn't it?
Yeah. But same spelling, so
different...
it would be the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe
it's not important. And then it moved to Paris, Vienna, London, Holland, and Germany, which all followed suit, eventually making landfall in the Americas.
Praise the Lord.
Coffee houses arrived in the Americas in the 1700s by way of a French infantry captain who nursed a single plant until arriving and planting it on the Caribbean island of Martinique. After the tax on tea was posted, the United States Continental Congress declared coffee the national drink. So
basically what you're telling me is that the British were actually doing us a favor.
Yes.
Moving us from tea to coffee. Maybe the market doesn't work in some instances. It needs a little nudge.
Well, we could call it the somewhat visible hand.
Somewhat more visible hand than is what's used to. But...
I mean, I would say that's a free market thing, you know? They were like, well, I don't want to pay taxes, so I'm going to go and drink coffee instead.
Right,
you
but
know?
Yeah.
Well,
that's fair.
Yeah.
You know me. I love my market.
Any time you can juxtapose your beliefs into history, it's interesting.
I love it.
Yeah. So we're going to flash forward another 122 years to the first espresso machine that was made in France. What is espresso, you ask? It is a pressurized version of coffee where they force water through very finely ground beans. We'll get into it a lot more later. And it develops a very rich and bold coffee that we often mix with milk and sugar to develop caramel macchiatos. Ugh. It hurt. Yep. It hurt saying it again.
I can say it next time.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
So, like I said, we're giving you an in-depth knowledge. This is the first page of like 5 pages of notes, so be prepared. We've explained the origins of coffee, and I'd like to discuss the
What Sean actually wanted to know.
the brewing methods and everything that Sean really
And
wanted.
types.
But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to latteart.org and specifically their page, A Brief History of Coffee. That's where I got a lot of our information from there. Also, turkishcoffee.org, I believe.
TurkishCoffeeWorld.com.
TurkishCoffeeWorld.com. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So first, we have the Turkish coffee, which I discussed before. It's prepared in a special boiling vessel with finely ground beans, often like the original Turkish coffee on the ashes of a fire. Turkish coffee is bold and hot, served in something similar to teacups. A person drinking Turkish coffee will drink the coffee slowly, allowing the fine grounds to settle, and then take another sip, and they'll continue to do this. After consuming the majority of the liquid, certain Turkish coffee serving establishments will tell you your fortune, as the drink has numerous religious and spiritual roots. It's really cool. I've always wanted to do it just to find out, like, maybe I have some wicked fortune that's going on, or maybe I'm just as boring as some guy who lives in Nebraska. But your fortune is told by flipping over the cup with the grounds in it and then reading the patterns in the dumped out grounds. So
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
Turkish coffee, is that still just served in like Turkey then?
No, you can find it in all sorts of places, but usually it has to be a bigger city like LA or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that's more hipster than what we do?
Possibly. I'd say it's a different type of hipster. It's like a history thing, you know?
Okay. See, because I want to go to a like big shop in LA and ask for a Turkish coffee, and then ask the barista that made it to tell me my fortune.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
And then get looked at really weird and told to never come to this establishment again.
Yeah. You can do that. I'll watch from outside.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We can go get wings later.
Hey, maybe we should do a podcast on wings. I feel like we wouldn't be able to go as in detail as coffee, though.
We'd have to eat wings while we did it.
That would be a mess.
Speaking of, why are we not... Well, I know why we're not drinking coffee, because it's, 9 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
But... Man, we should have done this one in the morning, except you have a real job.
Yeah, I have one of those real jobs, and I don't want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, neither do I. Oh, well, it would have been nice thematically, but,
yeah,
you know.
True. So
I'll drink my cup of coffee tomorrow for you.
I will drink multiple cups of coffee for you.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So
that's Turkish method.
Yeah, after Turkish coffee, we have the French press, and I'm moving in a logical order that hopefully makes sense. Basically, we're going from very bold to some of the more common methods, or some of the more easy to see in any place you live methods. I don't know if that makes sense either.
I feel like there's probably a word, common.
Common, yeah, that works. I like to use better words. You
like to use more words.
One syllable, please.
You like to use more words.
All right, our next brewing method, which is similarly bold but a cleaner coffee than the Turkish ancestor, is the French press. Although it may be known by many different names like the plunge, the push, or the, like I said, French press, it's one of the most popular designs of coffee brewing equipment. It is basically something that holds the grounds, and then you pour the water over the grounds, and you let it extract with the grounds just sitting in the water in this container, and then you put the top on, and you push the plunger down, thus plunge or push press, and you push all the grounds to the bottom and pour out this really bold, delicious cup of coffee, especially if you want a lot of caffeine. The French press gives you a lot of caffeine.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
You said the word extract. What does that mean?
So the beans, when you grind them, they release a fragrance, But when you pour water over these freshly ground beans, the water soaks in and extracts all the oils and nutrients and everything within the coffee bean. And that's what coffee is, basically, is the absorption of all the chemicals and everything and the oils from the coffee bean into the water.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like where things like the total dissolved solids comes out. Like,
yeah,
the longer it extracts or the more it extracts, the more dissolved solids you get.
Yes.
Okay. Now that what I just said there is why so many people hate me.
Yeah. The total dissolved solids is a chemical term. I don't know if I should get into that. Just because it's so chemically above even my head sometimes. I did it for chemistry and stuff. It's not too hard. But basically, you're just testing how much has absorbed into water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super interesting if you're looking into it. Maybe we'll do something with my actual degree in civil engineering, and I can talk about total dissolved solids.
Right. But so if you go to like a really nice shop, or I mean, not even a really nice one, but one that takes their coffee seriously, you'll probably see them usually keep a little bit of the coffee for themselves. And what they'll do is sometimes they'll test that coffee to check the TDS, or the total dissolved solids, to make sure that the strength is consistent, and that each cup of coffee, they want to make it as consistent as possible because they have a ratio that makes sense for what that coffee should taste like. And so if you see somebody like hold a little bit of coffee back, they're not trying to shortchange you, they're just doing some quality control.
Yeah. Some of our favorite places in Omaha showed us how they did the total dissolved solids with the coffee that they poured for us. And It was really interesting to learn about it. Check out Beansmith. Used to do it, but they don't have a physical location anymore, so that would be pretty hard to do. Archetype does it. I've seen them. They also have a sieve, which sorts out the beans or the grounds to a perfect consistent ground size.
Okay.
Either below or above a certain, it's a special kind of sieve.
Right.
That it's rated, they call it a number 20, but a number 20 sieve would allow a lot more than what I would want in my pour over. Okay. And that's also another civil engineering topic.
Just real quick, we may as well do it now.
Yeah.
We're just gonna, so when we say these words like Beansmith and Archetype and Aromas, and the fourth one is Mug Life, these are all coffee shops in Omaha. And if you're in the Omaha, Nebraska area, or you just want good coffee, we really encourage you checking those shops out, because they do really good work. I know a lot of the people that work at those shops. So Beansmith doesn't have a physical location anymore. And keep in mind, we don't get any money for this. We just really like supporting good coffee. And so if you want to get Beansmith coffee beans, you can go to beansmith.com/shop/coffee, and you can order a bag of their beans. They're delicious. I've never had a bad cup of coffee from there. And they're really good. And then Archetype, did you look up Archetypes?
Yeah, Archetype has a pretty cool thing, a coffee subscription. So they'll send it to you if you don't live in that area. And you can pay $16 per bag. It seems a little expensive, but I promise you it's some of the best coffee you'll ever drink in your life.
And for specialty coffee, that's really reasonable.
Yep. So you go to drinkarchetype.com. That's drinkarchetype.com. Or just search Archetype coffee in your search bar. That works too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then if you want to get Aromas, which is now, I think, Hardy Coffee, right?
They call themselves Hardy Coffee Company.
Right. But if you want to go get theirs, there's aromasbliss.com/shop. That might change soon.
I think they have a Hardy Coffee Company website as well.
Right. So, that's another really good shop. And then the last one is I don't know if they do it online or not, because this one's a little bit smaller. Yeah, so Mug Life Coffee is another really good one. It doesn't look like they do... yeah, they don't send it online. They don't do online ordering, but they're another good shop in Omaha.
Yeah.
So just wanted to make sure that we talked about where we learned a lot about coffee, and just some good shops that we know. And some help support some people.
You got to know your roots, and
exactly.
Omaha coffee is my roots.
Yep.
So back to the French press, you can get it at Hardy/Aromas. One's in Benson, and then another is down in the Old Market in Omaha. They will do a French press at the one in Benson, and they do a similar way to the one I'm going to tell you. Basically, you pour the hot water over the bean or over the grounds, like I told you, and then they extract for 4 minutes plus or minus 1 minute, depending on the roast. So if the coffee beans are roasted dark, then stay on the short side. You don't want it to extract too much from a dark roast, otherwise it will be very bitter. That's why I criticize Folgers, is because they basically roast their beans until they're black and then grind them up and throw them in a tin can, and even like 1 minute under hot water, and Folgers is bitter and tough to drink without sugar and milk.
Yep.
Well, if you go to Archetype and you get a lighter roast, you want to extract the beans longer, because that lighter roast didn't completely release everything from the bean. You're still getting a lot of the natural flavors from that bean. And those the craft brewing methods like the French press require some tinkering to develop the right flavor. So you may not get it right the first time. It may be bitter. It may not taste like much. I promise you it will probably be a very bold cup of coffee your first time doing a French press, just because it usually is. Moving on through the brewing methods.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
It takes time to get good at each of these methods if you're interested, but you just got to figure out what's going to work for you. And just the nice thing about these other methods is that you can control more of the variables when brewing. And that's kind of what you want to do. You want to be able to control how hot your water is, how big your grind size is, how light your roast is, how long your coffee and water are in contact with each other, and because each of those variables can really affect the taste of the coffee that you're going to be getting.
Definitely. I think it would be a good time to throw in some of the stuff that you'll need to perfect your grind size is a burr grinder and then a scale, so that you have a scale to measure your beans and the amount of water you're putting in to your pour over or your French press, which incredibly, the pour over is my next topic.
Right. And one more thing about that grinder. So you want to get a burr grinder. So there's going to be two kinds that you can get. There's a blade and a burr grinder. Blade grinders are going to be cheaper, but because of the nature of how they grind up the coffee, they're what they sound like. They're just a blade that spins in a circle, basically, and it just chops up the coffee. So that's going to do two things that you don't really want. One, it's going to heat up the beans, which can cause the flavor to become a little bit off. And two, it's going to cause your grind to be kind of uneven in size. And so you'll have some bigger chunks of coffee and some really fine chunks of coffee. And that makes it difficult to have an even extraction throughout your whole coffee making process. And so burr grinders are different. They grind the coffee between what are called burrs, two burrs, hence the name, burr grinders. And that gives you a much more consistent grind of coffee. You can have more control over how big your grind is, and they won't heat up the beans as much, which is something you're definitely looking for. And you can get you can get an okay burr grinder for like $50 that if you're a noob at coffee, you can't really tell the difference between a $50 and a $120 burr grinder.
If you want to go all out, you can get a $120 or even more expensive burr grinder, or you can buy a hand burr grinder, which is a little bit more consistent than a lot of the machines that you'll find, especially the lower end machines. And the hand grinder, it takes a little bit of time and it kind of sucks. It hurts your forearms if you're not used to it, but it gives you some of the most consistent ground coffee I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have a hand grinder, and I bought it for $40. It's the Hario hand grinder.
Yeah.
And it's great. I love the coffee that I make from that, and that's like I said, it's only $40. And if you're making 1 cup of coffee, that's about 25 grams of coffee, of actual like beans that you put in there. It takes probably about a minute to grind, and it's not bad at all.
Yeah.
And so that's an option if you don't want to spend a bunch of money on a nice electric grinder.
Yeah. It's I've got the Java press from Amazon, and
is that the really skinny, tall one?
Yep. It works perfect for me, and I use it like maybe twice or 3 times a week, just because I'm so busy with other stuff that by the time I get home to actually make coffee, it's about 5:30.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good idea for me.
Yeah.
So we're going to move forward with the brewing methods now. And I'd like to explain the Turkish coffee and the French press are both considered full immersion brewing methods. These brewing methods, the beans are soaked in the water and they're given time to extract. It gives you, like I've said, a very bold cup of coffee, but we're going to be moving into the pour over, which gives you a much cleaner, much more flavorful and diverse cup of coffee. This is where we really get our coffee snobbishness from, is the pour over, I would say.
Yeah, one note, when he says clean cup of coffee, he means there's not many grinds in it, because a lot of times with the French press, and I guess I assume with the Turkish coffee, I guess it definitely, you'll have coffee grinds at the bottom of your cup, and some people not many people really like having coffee grinds at the bottom, and unless you like Breckan and put them in like a dip and stick it in your mouth. And
I've done that way too much, but it started to hurt my stomach, so I stopped. Yeah.
But yeah, that's what he means by a clean cup of coffee.
Yeah. And anyone who wants to chew coffee grounds, they make like little packets that you can put in your mouth and not have to.
Do they really?
Yeah. They're called
I did not know
grinds. They help people quit chewing, actually.
Huh.
Yeah. So for all you chewers out there, check them out.
That want to quit.
All right. So, like I've said, my favorite method is the pour over method. The pour over containers I like to use most are the Hario V60, the Chemex, and the Kalita Wave. The Kalita Wave I haven't used personally, but the Archetype Coffee Shop in Omaha, it's in the Blackstone district if you've ever been there. It makes some of the best coffee I've ever seen, and it's also used by some of the best coffee makers in Omaha, so yeah, gotta love it. Nice. Scott and I drank numerous pour overs from the Kalita Wave, and I've had nothing but raving reviews for it.
Oh yeah, it's really good.
The pour over is prepared using a medium fine grind of beans and pouring hot water over the beans. Typically somewhere between a 1:15 and a 1:17 beans to water ratio is used to maximize flavor in each pour over cup of coffee. First, you start by heating up the water. Typically, I heat it up to about 205 degrees. The best temperature for brewing coffee is about 200 degrees, give or take. And heating it up to 205 degrees means any of the temperature lost while you're brewing the coffee is maintained within the actual coffee. That 5-degree buffer zone is pretty nice. Mm-hmm. So you start by wetting the filter after heating up the water in the pour over device and adding the fresh ground beans. Typically you want a medium fine ground. I think I said that before, right? Yeah. And after adding the beans, you bloom them with a 1:2 bean to water ratio. So if you have 20 grams of beans, that's typically what I've been doing lately. You use 40 grams of water. Now you might be thinking, why are you measuring the water in weight instead of milliliters? That's because it's a lot easier to measure weight on a scale instead of milliliters.
And aren't milliliters the same as grams?
Yeah. Basically.
Like most of the time, at least.
Yeah. water can expand and contract. So,
Right.
Just to make it easier, I say weight instead of a milliliters thing.
Right. And the bloom is really to wet all of the grounds.
Yeah.
And that just tends to be twice the amount of water, really. So that's kind of
it starts the extraction process, basically. So you're allowing the beans to soak up the water, and then that's going to help them release the flavors and the oils and everything into your cup of coffee. So after you wait about 30 seconds to a minute for the beans to soak up the water, you pour the remaining amount of water onto the beans slowly. The coffee made in a pour over is considered some of the smoothest, like I've said. It takes about 10 minutes for a good pour over. So if you're gonna go,
and that includes heat and water and everything.
Yeah. If you're gonna go all out and go for the pour over, make sure you wake up like 10 minutes earlier than normal so that you can take your time and make it as fresh and tasty as you
It's
like
worth it.
It is. It definitely is.
It's so good.
My productivity at work increases about 20 times that of when I don't drink a pour over in the morning.
Wow.
That's not a guarantee at all. But
you've measured that. Studies have shown.
That's a rough estimate. Yeah.
The science works out.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little detour here, and we're going to talk about cold brew next. Cold brew is delicious. I drink it all the time in the summer.
Oh,
Scott is the biggest fan of cold brew ever.
I drink way too much cold brew.
You and I would meet up. We would drink 2 cups of coffee, and then you'd be like, I think I'm going to get a cold brew to go. And I would be like, Scott, it's -5 degrees out. What are you doing?
Getting delicious cup of coffee.
He just had to have that cold brew.
So good.
So a lot of you might be thinking like cold brew is the stuff that you mix with the milk and the sugar, and you get that wonderful iced white chocolate mocha or the iced caramel macchiato. I said it again, Scott. But
stop.
But a lot of people look at it and they say, "Oh, cold brew, that's just, the foo fancy Starbucks drinks."
Mm-hmm.
And cold brew coffee is really some of the strongest stuff you can get, especially if you're looking for caffeine. It's made by soaking beans in water overnight in a drip tower. So this drip tower allows water to extract the beans' flavors and oils at room temperature by a similar immersion method as the French press, just prolonged for, I think we heard anywhere from 12 to 18 hours.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a lot of people call it the 24-hour cold brew. And that is the slowest amount of extraction time, or the longest amount of extraction time. So the caffeine content of your toddy, which is another word for cold brew, is a lot higher than your normal extracted like pour over or French press or Turkish coffee. The cold brew coffees that you'll usually drink will taste like chocolate or some of the darker fruit if you have a little bit more of an acidic coffee. Now, all coffee is acidic, but you have the darker roasts, which taste more like chocolate anyway, and then you have the lighter roasts, which taste more like fruit or very similar to tea. And cold brew is usually made with those darker roasts just because no one wants to drink like a weird acidic tea-like coffee.
Actually, one of the first cups of cold brew I had, it was from I think it was an Ethiopian that they used, and Ethiopians tend to be more acidic. And it tasted like, if you had put some sugar in it, it would have tasted like Coca-Cola.
Wow.
Like, that's like how acidic it was. It was nuts.
Yeah.
And it was just missing like that real sweetness to it, but it was pretty good though.
Was that at Mug Life?
No, that was Beansmith.
Okay.
It was just their Kyoto, but they had run it through with the Ethiopian, I believe.
Interesting.
And this was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that I want to clear up. So cold brew is different from iced coffee. Because iced coffee is just, you brew iced coffee hot, but then you stick it in the fridge and put ice in it and cool it down. Whereas cold brew is brewed at room temperature.
Yes.
That's what makes a cold brew a cold brew.
Yep.
And then you put ice in it. So that's kind of the difference between an iced coffee and a cold brew, is the temperature at which the coffee is brewed at.
Yeah. And the cold brew, because it extracts at room temperature, it brings out some different characteristics. Like I said, the dark chocolate, the toffee, and the
coffee flavor,
the darker fruit flavors. Those are all because it's extracted at room temperature for a long amount of time, versus when you pour the hot water on the beans, that triggers a lot of acidity to release from the bean. So that's another difference between cold brew and the pour overs and the French press that I've been discussing.
Yeah.
So for all you Starbucks and Folgers people, if you like to go to Starbucks and get the Pike's Place, or you
caramel macchiato,
you just had to say it.
Yep.
That's all right. We don't judge. We only make fun of you every other paragraph.
Right. Judging you in our minds. Loving you in our hearts, though.
Drip coffee is the last stop of our tour. Although Starbucks is famous for their espresso and their iced coffee drinks, we'll get into espresso, like I said, a little bit later. They're also a major contributor to the burnt coffee industry. Oh, did I really type that? Okay.
So true. Oh man.
So
that's perfect. I'm taking that line.
So if you've ever had just a black cup of coffee from Starbucks, you may have thought it was really delicious, or you may have thought, this tastes kind of burnt. And that's because Starbucks Pikes Peak is pretty dark roasted, if not completely burnt, as well as Folgers. Folgers is just completely burnt. Like, you're basically drinking ash water.
I think the joke I make is Folgers doesn't grind their beans. They just roast them so long that they disintegrate into ashes, and then you make your coffee using that.
Yeah. I always thought they just had a bunch of very hateful people, and they threw the bricks of beans at a wall, and then they just combusted into very tiny grounds, and then they swept that up and put it in a tin.
I will say this for Folgers, though. Those coffee tins are really useful to have.
They are.
And I miss that they really don't make them much anymore.
That's true. Or you don't see a lot of people using them anymore.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, Starbucks, Folgers, you usually drink this drip coffee at work, or if you're on the rush, you do it at home. You just whip up a quick cup of coffee. I'm not even going to touch on Keurig because it's not a real thing. And
we don't acknowledge Keurigs.
And the basics of the drip coffee machine are you place grounds within a filter within the machine, you drip hot water, or the machine drips hot water onto the coffee beans, and then voila, you have coffee. The machines can be cheap, low-level coffee machines like Mr. Coffee, which got me through college, so really it should be called Dr. Coffee.
No.
Boo. Okay. I thought it would go over well at 11 o'clock when I was writing this last night.
No.
Or the more expensive Gold Cup machine, which is basically a pour over, but it still doesn't deliver the quality that a good pour over made by a great barista can deliver.
Right. Well, you can't control all the variables as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do a pretty good job with those, but there's still something to be said for the handcrafted nature of the pour over.
Definitely.
Something I will say though about you can make good drip coffee.
Oh yeah.
The Gold Cup does. The Cuisinart, self grind things, those can do an adequate job. That just like we keep saying, you can't control all the variables that you need to in order to really hone in that cup of coffee the way a really good cup of coffee should be.
Definitely.
So, and another thing about Keurigs, I will just say this. Keurigs are instant coffee. So
yeah,
if you ever have tried instant coffee, like in those packets or whatever, a Keurig is just a more convenient way to create instant coffee. I will say this though, they heat up water pretty well.
They do indeed.
So
one of the things I like to do with instant coffee though is I put the packets in with a thing of hot chocolate, and it's basically a redneck mocha.
yeah,
That's super good. So
I like making hot chocolates from them.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
gotta take a little breather here. We're not even like halfway through.
Right. No. Now that we've finished talking about Keurigs,
yeah,
this episode's just gonna get better.
That's very true. So there's a bunch of different ways to brew coffee, but we haven't even touched on the one that Sean was probably talking about when he suggested it. He didn't really give us a good line to go on what he stares at on the menu at a coffee place. So we're just hitting everything, like I said. Mm-hmm. There's numerous ways to brew coffee, and espresso is one of the most intriguing. I already told you it's pressurized hot water that is pushed through a tightly packed fine grind of coffee. Although espresso is oftentimes considered the highest caffeine content, it has the lowest extraction time because it's just pushed through the coffee for 30 seconds or whatever. I don't have the exact timing. And due to its limited amount of exposure, it really doesn't extract all that much caffeine. It has a very, I would say, boring flavor for the most part, unless you're really getting some craft espresso from one of the shops in Omaha. If you're just getting a latte or something, then your espresso is going to be a dark roast. It's going to taste very chocolatey. It's not going to have the acidic flavors like a good award-winning espresso would have. Mm-hmm. So I've said this term latte-style drinks, and some of you may know what a latte is. I'm not going to get into every single latte-style drink. I'm going to get into like the top 3 that you see.
Right.
So,
and I will supplement with the rest.
That sounds great.
No, but real quick. So espressos, like you said, most espressos aren't going to be very good. But if you want to try a cup of coffee just kind of as in the most basic way possible, like espresso, it will really tell you whether or not you like that coffee.
Yes, very true.
So, like you said, though, a good espresso is really quite nice.
Yeah.
But you got to get it with sparkling water to cleanse your palate before you do it.
And that comes into a lot of like tastings that you'll go to, or maybe you'll hear of an espresso tasting. Yeah.
And if you so you get the sparkling water, and then people will really hate you because you're clearly the snobbiest person that they've ever met.
That's very true, and I'm one of those people that does that. But whenever I see someone with the sparkling water in their espresso, I have one of 2 thoughts. Either 1, I should go make friends with them, or 2, I don't like that person already.
Oh, I'm never going to listen to this episode. I'm just going to cringe.
Yeah.
How snobby we are.
So
it's self-aware snobbiness, though.
So espresso style or latte style drinks range from the straight espresso that we've been talking about to lattes and mochas to the more extreme frappuccinos from Starbucks. Now, I don't consider those real coffee. They're mostly sugar milk, but they do have some coffee flavor. So we'll give you a little bit of credit, Starbucks. My girlfriend's gonna listen to like 5 minutes of this episode and then be done with it.
She knows how you feel.
Yeah, she does. And she's moved into better coffee now.
Well, good for you.
I'm working on her.
Yeah.
So we'll start out with the straight espresso. It's super bold. It's delicious. And if you're really looking to dive into coffee and you just want the most bold, smack you in the face flavor, espresso is going to get you, unless you're next to a Turkish coffee restaurant. If you don't like the taste of coffee, though, and you have to mask it a little bit, or if you want to tone it down or make it a little bit...
Dilute it.
Yeah, dilute it. I'm trying to think of... cool it down. Wow, couldn't think of those 3 one-syllable words. A latte.
You're struggling, buddy.
A latte or a mocha maybe up your alley. Now,
You need some coffee.
I do need some coffee pretty bad.
Actually, coffee sounds amazing. This whole episode's made me want coffee.
This would be one of those times where we make coffee at 9:30 at night and then just play video games until one of us is like, yeah, I gotta get home.
Or the other one's like, hey, toppers.
That's right. We did start out talking about toppers, didn't we? Good thing we don't have one in Grand Island. I would be hungry too.
Oh, man. It's tough. It's rough.
So, Sean, when you see all the flavors on the board and don't know what to think, look for a latte because this is simply a mixture of espresso and steamed milk. There's a little bit of foam on the top, maybe for a design or something. It's super simple. You'll get the flavor of coffee. Since you said you like to drink black coffee, I'll assume that just a regular latte would be cool for you. Most places will serve the latte, if you don't like the flavor of coffee, with a vanilla or a caramel flavor. If you really want to go wild, there might be an agave syrup flavored one, which is basically sugar, like corn syrup, but made from agave. So it has a little bit of that tequila flavor for our legal aged listeners.
Irish coffee.
Irish coffee. Ooh. Well, Mexican coffee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but Irish coffee is usually what you think of when you think of alcohol with coffee.
So both of these options are delicious and great for the latte style coffee. If you just don't want to drink a black coffee, if you want the latte style coffee, or if you're just a regular old fashioned coffee noob, if you don't know what you like, try just a normal espresso one time latte one time and and see how you like it, because it'll have that flavor, but the sweetness and the creaminess of the milk will cut it and allow you to try it a lot, or taste it a lot better than you would if you just slammed a shot of espresso. Moving on to my favorite espresso drink, it's the macchiato, which literally translates as a mark of cream. A macchiato is made by pulling a shot of espresso and then putting a dash of cream in the espresso cup with a little bit of foam on top, which is the complete opposite of the Starbucks macchiato, because caramel should never touch anything named a macchiato. And Starbucks just ruined it because...
You seem passionate about this.
Yeah. This is my little rant against Starbucks caramel macchiatos.
Hey,
they may be
preach, buddy.
They may be delicious, but all you're doing is drinking sugar milk with a mark of espresso. And that's what Starbucks did, basically. They, instead of having their espresso with a mark of cream, they did milk with a mark of espresso. And then they threw caramel on top because, at Starbucks, you pick your flavor, you pick your Italian word, and you move to the left. Shouts out to Chris Porter for that joke. If you like inappropriate comedians, he's a good one. But if you're of the purer mind, please stay away.
Stay here.
Stay here.
We'll filter him for you.
Yeah. To move into that fake coffee zone, the Frappuccino is something that I often rave against. I've tried to make it sound like I'm not judging you for drinking one of those sugary coffee drinks, but I mean... Come on, man. Come on.
So here's the thing. Here's what I want to say, and I think you agree with me on this.
Yeah.
Drink those drinks. Enjoy them, because they're good. They're delicious. Lots of sugar is delicious. But don't say, I love coffee. Coffee is delicious.
Yes.
Because that's not coffee.
Yes.
So I think that's a reasonable middle ground.
Preach.
Right. Enjoy those drinks. But you're not a coffee drinker if that's all you drink.
Yeah, and that's what I get to is you hear all these people and they're like, oh yeah, I love drinking coffee, and then you go to a coffee shop with them and you're like, oh, what'd you get? And they're like, I got a quadruple pump vanilla extreme frappuccino, and you're like, what
coffee did you get?
Did you leave room for coffee, or was there just sugar?
And we're not talking about like lattes or cappuccinos, because like those are legitimate coffee drinks. But when you do what Starbucks does to them, it doesn't count.
we
Sorry.
should label this the best way to explain why Starbucks sucks instead of the best way to explain coffee.
The best way to explain coffee snobbery.
Very true. So I missed a little something when we were talking about just the straight up latte. If you make a latte with chocolate milk, so you steam chocolate milk and then you pour it into the espresso, that's a mocha. So if you ever see a mocha, boom, there you go. That's what it is.
Nice.
Yeah. Holy Moses.
Is that all the espresso drinks you were going to talk about?
Yeah.
I've got a few.
If you want to list out a few, give me a little voice break. That would be amazing.
So yeah. So those are some of your basics, like you said. So you get the espresso. You can also get a double espresso, which is just what it sounds like, just 2 shots of espresso rather than 1. You can get a ristretto, which is just an espresso shot that's extracted with the same amount of coffee but half the amount of water. So it's like a really strong espresso. So if you see a ristretto, and this is one, the next one's one I'm surprised you didn't mention, the Americano.
The Americano.
So the Americano is a common one that you'll see. So what that is, it's just a shot of espresso, but then it's filled up the rest of the way with hot water. And so it dilutes the espresso, and it tastes like a regular cup of coffee, but this is my little coffee tip for you. If you go to a new shop or somewhere doesn't have great coffee, get their Americano, because it's tough to screw up an Americano, because if they've got you're going to get as good a cup of coffee as you could there, because a shot of espresso, if they know how to pull a shot of espresso, which most baristas do, they can't really screw up pulling a shot of espresso and putting hot water over it. And maybe it's not going to taste great, but that's going to be more due to the beans that they have rather than anything the barista does. So Americanos are a really safe drink to get. That's usually what I'll get at like Starbucks or at new coffee shops that
for sure
I don't know about.
Do you know the history behind the Americano? Yeah, the history behind it is during World War II, we had a bunch of soldiers in Italy and France, and our soldiers couldn't handle the espresso that the Italians and French drank, so they would ask for hot water to be poured into it so that they could handle the coffee flavor. It's kind of funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's the Americano. And then you talked about the latte. So the latte is just the shot of espresso with steamed milk and then a centimeter of, well, not always, but a centimeter of what's called microfoam. And that's usually what you see if you see latte art. So hearts or whatever on it. And then there's the cappuccino, which is like a latte, but it just has more foam than milk, whereas the latte has more milk than foam. And so that's the difference between a cappuccino and a latte. And then you get to a flat white. So a flat white is a shot of espresso in a cup, and then you add steamed milk into the cup, but there's no microfoam. So it's basically a latte without the foam. And I know Archetype does a flat white, I think.
Yep.
And those are really good.
Yeah.
So if you just like it, it'd be like order a flat white if you want coffee with some cream in it.
Yeah.
So if you like to drink creamer with your coffee, a flat white's gonna do you well.
And if you order a flat white from Starbucks, it's very similar. I believe they actually use half and half instead of milk to make it a thicker drink to kind of prove that it's different from a latte.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a flat white. And then one other I just wanted to add in because I like it, the affogato. So affogatos are really good. So basically you have a scoop of vanilla ice cream, and then you pour a single or double shot of espresso over the ice cream, and it's so good. The sweetness of the ice cream really complements the espresso, and it's just really, really good.
So I'm guessing you've had the one at the Aromas in the mall, which we forgot to mention earlier.
Oh, yeah. No, I had the one, Archetype does it with
they do the
Coneflower Creamery just across the street.
Yeah.
And that one is delicious.
I bet that is.
So I just wanted to mention that. For those of you who have a sweet tooth but really like coffee, affogatos are really good. And so, yeah, those are some other espresso drinks I wanted to mention that you might find.
Nice. So, we're going to move into something a little bit more specialized. It typically has to do with the actual roasting of coffee. So the roasters, what they do, you don't just get a bag of beans roasted over a fire from Africa, and then you're like, oh, hope this one's good. You get green beans, if you're a roaster, and then you roast them yourself to create a flavor or a taste profile that you think will highlight the coffee the best. So,
oh shoot, one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to talk about this. But the list of espresso and iced coffee drinks, that's going to be on the show notes page at thebestwaytoexplainit.com/6.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
You don't have to write them down, no.
Someone's scrambling to take notes like, oh, I got to have my coffee. I got this. All right, so your flavor profile is something that every good roaster strives to perfect. They want to find the best, most unique profile. I remember Beansmith one time had a coffee from Burundi that tasted like peanut butter, and that really...
No, that was Brazil.
That was Brazil?
Yeah.
I thought it was Burundi.
I think it was a Brazil. The Burundi was... It was the same kind of nuttiness, but I think it was a Brazilian.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was the Recreo, right?
Oh, yeah, the Recreo.
Oh,
yeah.
that was the best cup of coffee I've ever had.
It was so good because usually I'm going for those light roasts, but you get a coffee that tastes like peanut butter, and your mind is blown.
Yeah, because it's not flavored to taste like peanut butter, but just the way the coffee was roasted and how it was grown, it tasted like peanut butter, or it had those peanut butter notes, and it was so cool and so good.
So the way that they developed this flavor profile, we're just going to run with the Brazilian Recreo coffee, is they do these things called cupping. So coffees, there's a huge competition. Everyone wants to create this rare, unique, incredible peanut butter flavored coffee, and they cup the coffee through 3 different phases, I'm going to say, or 4 separate parts if you're actually in a competition. And those 4 separate parts would be fragrance/aroma, the flavor, aftertaste, acidity, body, and balance. So fragrance and aroma are the first one. Number 2, as I just said, flavor, aftertaste, acidity, body, and balance. 3, sweetness, uniformity, and cleanliness. And then finally, scoring. And that's how all the competitions, all the tastings of coffee are scored. Now, if you're just doing a drive-by cupping, we'll get into how you do it. And we'll do that right now. You want to have a cup. It's a special cup for cupping, but you could just call it an open-mouthed teacup or something like that. And you want a cupping spoon, preferably 2. And you grind the beans. It's a medium grind for the beans. And then you allow them to sit for a little while in a cup. You want to sniff these ground beans from the cup, and you can do this by the sniff or the drive-by technique. So the sniff, you're just sticking your nose in there and you're smelling these dry coffee beans to figure out what they smell like dry, and that's called the fragrance, I believe.
Yeah.
Yep. And then what you do is you pour hot water on top of these. Oh, I missed the drive-by technique. The drive-by technique is where you kind of waft it. You move the cup back and forth underneath your nose so that you're smelling non-ground coffee, just plain old air, and then coffee, and then plain old air again. And it helps to trick your nose into smelling more unique things. These techniques help you to break down any nose blindness that you have. So think of your smelly socks or something. Maybe you go nose blind about 4 minutes after putting them on. whereas everyone else can smell how nasty your socks smell because you have smelly feet, Scott.
Guilty. Tough but fair.
Tough but fair. So you'll pour the hot water onto the grounds, and then you will do the same thing again. You will sniff, or you will do the drive-by technique, and you will smell the aroma now. So first you have the dry fragrance, and now you have the wet aroma of the coffee, and then you'll take notes for both of these to develop that flavor profile. And maybe you'll smell some fruit or some flowers. That would be a very acidic coffee. Excuse me. And then you'll also smell some dark fruit maybe, or even chocolate if you have a darker roast. If it smells like peanuts, typically that means you got a bad batch of coffee, but peanut butter is a different thing, but that comes more through the tasting. So 5 minutes after you have poured the hot water onto the beans, allowed it to extract into the water, you want to break the crust so the grounds will float on the top of the water. Basically, you take your cupping spoon, it's a very specific small spoon, and you break that crust of grounds at the top of the cup, and you allow it to sink to the bottom. Wow, I was really struggling there. And then once it's sank to the bottom, you'll have this white tan or very light tan stuff at the top, and that's called the crema, and that's a very bitter substance that will affect your taste buds adversely. So you want to clean,
don't drink that.
You want to clean that off of the top of the cup, and then what you want to do is you want to take that cupping spoon and pick up some coffee, or like scoop up some coffee so you have it. You want to purse your lips as if you were going to blow on it and cool soup, but instead of doing that, you want to suck it up onto your taste buds, and you want to cover all of your taste buds to try and pinpoint very specific flavors. It's a very intricate process, and once you've nailed it, you will be within probably the top 1% of coffee drinkers.
Oh, I couldn't do it last time we did it.
It was super tough. Scott and I went to, you can't do it anymore, but we went to a cupping at Beansmith, and I tasted a couple coffees and it was good, but I couldn't taste anything after the first couple.
Yeah, no, it was tough. The roaster there was trying to show us how, but it seemed like more of you just kind of had to know how to do it in order to. There's a lot of things that he said that it sounded like you just kind of had to do it before you knew how to do it, and that's unfortunate. But
yeah, you really have to just watch someone do it and then try it a couple times to perfect it. Yeah.
Oh shoot! You know what? Did you mention the crema on espresso?
I did not.
Oh, okay. Probably should mention that. So when you drink an espresso, because some people don't like it.
Yeah.
So you'll sometimes get a spoon to like spoon off the top layer of the espresso is going to be like lighter. It's going to look like you put cream in the coffee or something, and that's called the crema. And that can be very bitter. And so a lot of times people will recommend that you scrape that off the top and then dump it off to the side and then drink the espresso. Some people like it. Some people like to drink it. But just be warned that maybe you won't like that part of the espresso.
Yeah, definitely. See, I never knew what that spoon was for.
Yep. No, that's what it's for.
I just thought it was a cute little garnish on the plate.
No, the reason I learned what that was for is that I was sitting at the kind of the bar area at Archetype, and I was just holding it, not really knowing what to do because I'd never ordered an espresso before.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, you use it to scrape the crema off." And
okay.
I didn't know what the crema was. I was like, "What the heck is this?" And he's like, "That's the thing. It's the kind of crust-looking thing at the top of the espresso. You can scrape that off because some people think it's bitter."
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, "Oh, I don't feel stupid," or I felt stupid.
It was the first time in a long time, I'm sure, that you hadn't known anything about coffee.
Yeah. Well, no, this was the first time I'd had an espresso.
Well, yeah, but
Well, though, like it was like before because like I didn't really get into coffee until I came to Omaha. Like I drank it, I just didn't know. This was like freshman year.
Okay, I didn't.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I could have educated you on coffee a long time ago.
I know.
Well, you get a unique opportunity when you do the cupping and you taste this coffee through your taste buds and actually spooning it into your mouth. You know, because
as opposed to how you usually taste coffee.
I mean, your nose is like 70% of how you taste. Anyway,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
So for you bigwigs that want to get advanced, I'm going to talk about retronasaling. Retronasaling is a process of smelling and tasting coffee or beer or wine for our legal aged friends. Said that twice already.
Yeah.
But you suck in that coffee onto your taste buds, and it's unique because you're doing the cupping, that you're sucking it in and you're letting it spread out on your taste buds, but then keep breathing in, hold that breath for about 5 seconds, and then exhale through your nostrils and focus on the bridge of your nose, and then see if you can taste anything, or it seems like you can taste something. I've noticed this a lot with some of the darker beers I drink.
Really?
As I exhale, I can taste more of the notes that they say I should be able to taste with that beer. So
this is like extreme beer drinking now.
Yeah. Well, I learned that because I was on a brewery tour this weekend, and the guy who was giving us the tour was all about smelling beer. He probably enjoyed smelling the beer more than actually drinking it. So yeah.
So I'm gonna teach you about the method of beer drinking that I'm expert at. It's called the shotgun method. So, which
maybe
not an expert.
A different.
Done it twice.
Yeah, maybe a different time. We'll go through all the terrible ways to consume awful beer.
Oh man.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're wrapping up, and the last thing I want to touch on, because a lot of people get a little sketched out when they hear me talking about drinking so much caffeine. So I wanted to talk about the health benefits and some of the health risks with coffee. So a lot of studies show a lot of different things. If I plotted them, there'd probably be no correlation with the data. Honestly, it's probably a net zero benefit. So you don't get anything, but you aren't making yourself less healthy. But I'll run through some of the stuff that I've found. I found these on harvardhealth.org, I believe. And the number one thing that is a health benefit is cardiovascular disease. And typically with caffeine, you hear people saying, oh, it's going to cause a heart attack, blah, blah, blah. But if you drink 3 to 4 cups of coffee per day, it will help defend against heart attack, heart failure, and stroke. Number 2 is type 2 diabetes, conveniently located.
Ooh.
Yeah. Number 3.
Well, it's not your type.
Yeah,
so.
It's not my type. Number 3 is Parkinson's disease. Number 4 is uterine and liver cancer. Number 5 is cirrhosis. And number 6 is gout. And then, ironically, in the health risks department, if you drink a very high amount of coffee, so again, it has to do with caffeine, it can cause cardiovascular disease. It may cause a heart attack for someone who's older and has a weaker heart. It could also cause bladder and pancreatic cancer, esophageal cancer. And that's mostly because you're drinking a hot liquid, unless you're drinking cold brew or something. If you drink it under 149 degrees, you should be good and protected against esophageal cancer, which is your throat, for those of you who don't know. If you drink it hotter than that, Scott and I typically drink it hotter than that. I would say.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have cancer yet, so
Therefore,
yeah, therefore I'm good.
it's been disproven
until I get it. But it can also cause some minor side effects that some people may not like. It's made me jittery. It's impaired my sleep before, and it can heighten someone's anxiety or cause someone to have minor anxiety. And I've probably experienced that too. Like drinking coffee before a test, I get a little bit more nervous. But yeah, that's the best way to explain coffee. Scott, you got any questions?
I don't. I do have a few questions, but I do have a few comments as well, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So about the health benefits,
Yeah.
and I don't know that this is necessarily a benefit, but a health benefit, but I find that it blunts my appetite, especially on an empty stomach.
Oh yeah.
So if I just drink a cup of coffee in the morning, I don't need breakfast or I don't need to eat until 1, 2 in the afternoon, which is super helpful, especially when you're doing stuff like intermittent fasting. And I think that's a result of the caffeine in it.
Yeah.
Is that it's a appetite suppressant. So that's, I think, a really cool benefit of drinking coffee.
Definitely.
And I guess another risk is the fact that you might get addicted to it. So what caffeine does is it triggers your brain to secrete adrenaline, and that's what you feel when you're really amped up. It's not the caffeine, it's the adrenaline that your brain's secreting. And if you drink a lot of coffee, your brain is going to forget to secrete adrenaline on its own. And so it'll lead you to, that's what you get, the kind of groggy feeling when you don't have your coffee. It's because your brain hasn't secreted the adrenaline because it's so used to being triggered by external forces that it's not doing it on its own. And so that's the worst part of being addicted to coffee. But the easy way to solve that is just never go a day without drinking coffee. Am I right?
I mean, that's one way to deal with addiction. Another way is to, take a week off or something and just fight through that feeling. I've actually take a couple days off and then I go back on, and it helps out a lot because then I'm energized in the morning, and then if I need coffee or I feel like I want coffee, I can drink it. There's nothing structured to it at all. I'm just like, hey, I don't feel like drinking coffee, or no one made coffee today, so I don't drink it. And that's honestly the best way to do it, in my opinion. Yeah. Getting addicted to it. I was reading an article. It was kind of funny. Not necessarily funny. It was all about the energy drinks and caffeine, a gateway drug. And I'm not sure what to think of it. It's just kind of a short little article, but if you look at it and you see some evidence of how energy drinks and everything are, causing people to go to harder stuff like, I don't know, seltzer water.
Oh boy.
Man, dangerous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you find yourself becoming addicted, maybe you need some help.
Don't go to seltzer water. It's not the answer.
It's not the answer.
Oh, okay, man. So I did have a question. Well, it was more a question. Are you going to talk about decaf at all?
You mean not real coffee?
Because if not, I can touch on it real quick.
You can touch on it if you want.
Okay, so because we were kind of talking about caffeine. So you can also get decaf coffee. Now, there's a misconception that it's the roasting that removes the caffeine, and so all decaf beans are just over roasted. It's not actually true. So the way the decaffeination process works is that the coffee is submerged in chemicals that extract the caffeine out of the bean. And so this is done to the green beans. And so there are a variety of different these are organic processes that you can do. And the chemicals will draw out the caffeine from the coffee bean. And I'm not going to get into the different methods, but that's basically what the decaffeination process does. And the same thing happens with decaffeinated teas that normally have caffeine in them. And so the reason why decaf coffee is just is because who wants to drink coffee without caffeine? Am I right?
Yeah. There are some people who they want that the flavor of
the
coffee,
hot coffee flavor at night. And my mom's one of those people. And if I found a few good decafs, I think Beansmith's got a decaf that's not too bad.
Yeah.
But I just prefer having caffeine. And so that's what decaf is. And so then there's also this conception that so you might hear it say around the coffee community that light roasts have more caffeine than dark roasts. So it's technically true, but the reason isn't that the dark roast bean, like an individual bean, doesn't have less caffeine than the light roast bean. It's that I believe that the lighter roasts weigh less, and so when you're measuring out your coffee, you use more beans to have the same amount of coffee per water, and so thus, if you have more beans, you're going to have more caffeine per cup of coffee, right? And so that's why you think of light roasts as having more caffeine than dark roasts.
I believe that's how it was explained to us.
Yep. That's straight from the source.
Yeah. The coffee gods of Omaha. Wow, man.
That's holy cow, we talked for a while.
That's quite the episode there. So if you're
Sean.
Yeah.
There you go. That's pretty much what I know about coffee.
Yeah. If you need anything else, hit us up at thebestwaytoexplainit.com/suggestions.
Yeah, and if you guys are interested, please, it'd be nice if you guys would subscribe at thebestwaytoexplainit.com/subscribe. That'd be really helpful to us. And if you want, leave a rating and a review. That would be really nice. Just let us know what you think. And we'd love to hear back from you guys about different show suggestions. If you want, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Scott Olson25, and you are.
I am at Breckan Nielsen, I believe. Just capital B, capital N. If you spell it right the first time, congratulations.
I don't think caps even matters, if I remember correctly from Twitter. But hit us up. Let us know if you like the episode, and that'd be super cool. And so, I don't know. Did you have anything else?
Not really. I'm all talked out on coffee.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next time.
Get learning.